What's going on, y'all? This is John with Facemask Fantasy, and today we're talking the Bills running backs as it pertains to fantasy, because we received a few questions about the value of this group in our live streams recently, and it's just a topic I'd like to clear up for some people. Which running back in the Bills backfield is the back to own in 2022? For my money, I'd say it's Devin Singletary. I know the Bills drafted James Cook in the second round this past draft, and it's the highest that the Bills have drafted a running back since they drafted CJ Spiller with the 9th pick in the 2010 draft, but James Cook is a rookie who is coming into the NFL. He isn't your traditional running back who hits the ground running week one. He's a pass catching specialist with a BMI in the 8th percentile. And this means two things. First, he will need to learn the passing assignments and the parts of the playbook that might take the longest for a running back to learn. And he will need to bulk up in order to handle the rigors of an NFL season. In a past video, I went through a bunch of pass-catching specialist running backs and analyzed their BMIs upon entering the league. We took a look at James White, Dion Lewis, Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissic, Austin Eckler, and for you old heads, Chris Thompson and Danny Woodhead. And James White had a BMI in the 51st percentile. Dion Lewis had a 52nd percentile BMI. Nyheim Hines had a 50th percentile BMI. Eckler had a 34th percentile BMI coming out. Chris Thompson had a 50th percentile BMI. Woodhead had a BMI in the 41st percentile. And James Cooks, again, is in the 8th percentile. J.D. McKissic has a 3rd percentile BMI, and he is the only back I can find who has a BMI at or lower than James Cook's coming into the league. And remember, it took McKissic 5 years in the league to build up his body to the point where he was able to be utilized as a real weapon, even just on a part-time basis. Now, none of these backs had the draft capital investment that the Bills used on James Cook. Cook was drafted in the 2nd round, and all those backs listed were drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds, or were undrafted free agents altogether. So Cook should get a look earlier than those backs listed. Cook most likely will not have to wait the 5 years that McKissic had to see significant playing time. But I do not think he is a day one starter. I do not think he is the back to own in this backfield for 2022. And I don't think the back to own in this backfield is Zack Moss either. And I don't think Duke Johnson even makes the team, considering they drafted James Cook in the 2nd round to be their pass catching specialist. So that brings us to 2019 3rd round pick, Devin Singletary, the guy who, for my money, will be the back to own in fantasy for the Buffalo Bills in 2022. From weeks 1 to weeks 4 last year, he averaged 15 touches per game and was the RB27 in standard leagues and the RB32 in PPR. From weeks 5 to 10, he was phased out of the offense to a certain extent as the team attempted to utilize Zack Moss in more of a 1A role, and that experiment fell flat. The team realized it pretty quickly as they started losing more games over that span. The offense just wasn't executing at the top tier level that anyone was expecting. The ugly Jacksonville loss was in there. The ugly Indianapolis loss was in there. There was an ugly loss against Tennessee in that range of games. And eventually, the coaching staff came to their senses, threw Zack Moss out of the starting lineup, and put in Matt Breida for a few games. And that didn't work, predictably. So they went back to using Devin Singletary even more than they had in the beginning of the season. And from weeks 11 on, he was the RB6 on the season in standard leagues and the RB9 in PPR leagues. Now, Matt Breida hadn't been phased out of the lineup completely until really week 12. So from week 12 onward, for the last 6 games of the season, Singletary was the RB4 in standard leagues and the RB6 in PPR. Now, as you can see from those finishes, he was a very undervalued piece in fantasy last year, towards the end of the season, and thus he's a very undervalued piece in fantasy this year. In redraft and best ball, he's absolutely a target for me, and he's even an undervalued piece in Dynasty if you're a contender for this year. So those are my thoughts on the Bills' backfield as it pertains to 2022, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Put your thoughts in the comment section below, or better yet, tune into one of our weekly live streams. We have a live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. EST, so come in, throw your question about Devin Singletary, James Cook, or Zack Moss, or any fantasy-relevant situation or player into the chat, and we can have a conversation about it in real time. But my name is John, this is Facemask Fantasy. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.